Welcome back to another episode of the Gentleman's Dojo podcast. And I am excited for you guys to hear our guest today, Connally McKay, the one and only from Austin, Texas. Connally, thank you so much for showing up on the podcast today.
Brother, thanks for having me. I'm excited. We've been trying to do it for a little bit, and here we are. Life will always works in divine timing.
Always does. And I'm excited to really for the people to hear kind of your story through the process. So the Gentleman's Dojo is a place and a space where us men can come together and do the work, right? That's why I created it. And to give people context about how we met, me and Connally met in Austin, Texas. Was that 2 years ago already?
Man,
Wow.
hey, listen, was it 2,000 years ago or was it 2 years ago? Dude, yes.
Right. It kind of does feel like
Yeah.
2000. I mean, honestly, with the all right. So Connolly, the type of where I met Connolly was in Austin, Texas. It was at a Marconics practitioner certification class, and for the audience to kind of get a grasp of Marconics, I think we could say this respectfully. Those who kind of get drawn into Marconics energy or Marconics in general are more uh, they're highly developed spiritually, right? And it's not like a judgment space, but it's just like typically people who get drawn to it are people who've been actually been doing the work and the inner work in the spiritual work for a long time. And it really, I feel like it really is like a next level of sovereignty as beings, as us beings, right? So Connolly, I wanted, I told the audience that so they can have an understanding of how we met. But I walk into this certification class and I see Connolly, this big dude. I'm like, oh my God, this man is massive. And would love to hear your story of what drawn you to not only Marconics, but spirituality. Because, once I got the chance to know you, you're a badass rugby player and you're the sweetest, most gentle person. And that's kind of the premise of this podcast is the toughest people I've met that are men have been the most gentlest hearts, right? And I think you're a great example of that. So I would love for you to share with the audience kind of what was your pivotal point being this big, strongly, the society sees this big, strongly manly man, and what got you to, walk into this space of being a gentle heart and working on yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Right back at you. First of all, I doing Marconics type of work, and frankly, the world is changing. This is maybe a bit of a stereotype that is not no longer applicable. But you would do workshops or you do Marconics works, and you kind of had an idea of maybe the type of person that would be there. So when a Josh Munoz is in there and you're there and you're like, okay, it doesn't have to be it's open to everybody, and it's open to everybody looking to accelerate their spiritual path. And it doesn't mean that you have to be a certain size or race or a gender, right? It's for everybody. And so seeing you in places like that, it just, I don't know, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel more at home. So yeah, that was a great experience. Obviously, it's where we first met. It's interesting. You and I were chatting a little bit prior, and some of these things about me, but going back, the pivotal moment and the turning place in my life was an ankle injury.
Wow.
Way long ago, actually. I was leaving Baylor playing rugby in college, and it was frankly it wasn't a catastrophic deal, but it was one of those injuries where it was never right. The inflammation never went away, and I ended up having arthroscopic surgery in 2007. So again, an older injury. I've lived with it for a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so get it surgically repaired, and long story short, it never healed. It was
Wow.
never right. Inflammation never went away fully, and so at the time of my life, I'm drinking beer like all the other rugby guys and not paying much attention to my diet. And the initial sort of rabbit hole for me was researching inflammation in the body.
Wow.
And so, yep. And so it got me to change my view on alcohol. It got me
Mhm.
to change my view on what I'm putting in my body, and it really radically changed my nutrition. And so, I will tell you, because you asked how we get here, right? So I'm a big proponent of treating our human vessel with the same sort of intention and care and love that a lot of us will treat our spiritual or source connection to God too, right?
Right.
I don't think I could think clearly and it sort of awakened and enlightened space with when I wasn't in a healthy body, healthy mind.
Right.
And so that's what was the catalyst. And I will tell you, interestingly, with that, it took years, Josh.
Yeah.
But when I look back, it was painful, and I dealt with pain. And when I look back years later, I'm talking 6, 7, 8 years later, and I started to have gratitude for that injury and
Mm.
gratitude for the ankle,
Mm.
gratitude for the experience.
Yeah.
Everything shifted.
Wow.
Pain, physical pain was processed differently in my body.
Hmm.
Um, I started to get, again, really serious about doing the best with it that I could, which was still very good. And I've been blessed with an athletic and strong body. And so I completely shifted my attitude about that injury. I was angry for a long time. I was
Wow.
angry and I was in pain.
Wow. Wow. Wait, and I want to make a good point. And also, Connally, would you be able to take off your AirPods? Maybe just use the
Yeah.
regular
Is it coming
mic.
coming
It's
through
coming.
funky?
Yeah, it's coming in and out. And when we first started, it wasn't like that. And I want to make sure that I want the audience to hear everything you say. And I want to make a good point. Can you speak real quick so I can mic check?
Good.
Oh,
Good.
oh my God, that sounds perfect. Yeah, thank you. So Conley, what I want to make a point there where you just said, I don't want the audience to overlook this. And sometimes as us men who've been doing the work for like years, right? We can overlook the amount of time it took. And part of being in the dojo is like very similar to martial arts. And it is the fact that everyone wants to be a black belt, but no one wants to spend the years going through it. And I really want to harp on the fact that it took you years and years to get to a space and a place to show gratitude for it, And if you're an audience right now, listen, this is why I want to remind you to show that, the patience, to have that patience and that commitment. Even it took you years, but you eventually got there. Because a lot of times they can see Conley now and they go, man, his spirit is so awesome and he has so much gratitude. But you also said, like, this thing took me years to get to this point.
I mean, a decade. If we want to put linear time, we're talking a decade of struggling with it mentally and physically. And I will just say, from a metaphysical standpoint, as you were kind of touching on, and I was saying, again, I'm not saying that you change your mind and all pain goes away. I'm not saying that you look up at the sky and say, okay, I want it to be pink today, but chipping away over time with the gratitude with that specific body part and that specific injury, physical pain decreased in my particular experience. Nothing physical changed.
And
yes, again, I was adding on these nutrition, supplemental things, and mobility and all these things. So, there was this immaculate combination whenever I put my mental energy to what I was doing physically that elevated everything with my physical body.
Yes, I'm Conley. I am so excited you brought that up because I love talking about that. And I think a lot of people undermine the power of their magic. And I think we're magical beings, and what we're able to do is because every thought process creates a frequency that we're able to now influence other energy, which if you look at the whole spectrum of it, we're all made up of energy. So what you did is you use that frequency of your mind and your spirit to focus on this and look at what happened. And Man, I'm glad you brought that up because I think a lot of people, especially athletes, listen to a lot of men. I think a lot of men deal with this, some type of injury, and they're trying to do therapy and all these things. And I'm not saying it's not important. I think you should do all of it. But
Yes.
you said it was your mind.
Well, and isn't that right? You go back to any of the ancient teachings, or I'll like to read a chapter in a book, and then let it ruminate for a couple of days sometimes. But I've got the Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill.
Yep.
Been an old one than sitting there on the, but not to tangent onto that, but it's the same thing because he talks about the power of mind, but there's got to be action behind it, right? Yeah. And then that's where, as you use a perfect word, that's where the magic occurs. That's where the magic occurs when the physical stuff is there, but your mind's not there. You know, it's like a whack-a-mole game. Like it's always something. You're never in flow. Mm-hmm. And yes, you know, I would, and you and I would probably agree. You need to get that mental space even before the physical, but you tend to be slower or sort of just treading when you got the mind on, but the physical's not there. You've got to sort of marry both, and that was totally totally relevant and obvious with that ankle injury. Is unbelievable. And as I was showing you before, and you know some about my rugby, like it proved up way much later in my playing on I was late 30s whenever I was playing my best rugby, which again makes little sense, as you know, because we're supposed to be primed in our, late 20s, early 30s. And I was almost 40 years old playing my best rugby, which again, that really speaks to the power of the mind there.
Wow. I love that. Yeah. And I think that's a big reminder. It's like, it's never too late to do the dreams you had, because I remember even just for me in high school, like I was so not confident playing sports in high school, but now 31, right? And I go to play basketball and I'm so good. And it's like, and it's like, wait a minute, where was this 10 years ago? And it was one of those things where it's like, my mind wasn't there. My confidence wasn't there. My spirit wasn't there, and I was more attached to the winning and how I look and not engulfed into the play of actual sports. But it's cool you bring that up, because I think a lot of us guys, they tend to let go of their dreams or their passions so early, right? And I think it's cool. So talk about your story of what's been your process of rugby, and then what I know your mind has shifted, but what was your thought process of continuing to play rugby in your 40s?
Yeah, good question. And I want to talk in a sec about the Marconics and that spiritual side, because there's an interesting thing too. So, and I will tell you, as it does really apply, it took me a decade to get thankful for this injury, right? So in this time period now, we're looking at 2015, 2016. I'm in my mid 30s. So the club I had played for, the Austin Rugby Club, we had lost every national championship we had ever played in up into that time. 2015, we lost, I want to say that was number 5. Wow. So it's an interesting thing. And many of your martial artist guys will completely empathize, because worldwide rugby is a big deal, and there's professional rugby and high level national rugby. But I'm playing club rugby. I'm playing United States Division I club rugby. I'm playing for the love of the game. I have a 9 to 5, two boys. I'm married, so
man.
It's
That's
the love of the game.
Yeah.
So it's just to think about playing for the love of the game and putting your resources together to fly out to California or Denver multiple times and losing the national championship every time there's something to that is, I feel like it's different. It's not worse or better than, losing the Super Bowl, but those guys may be making tens of thousands of dollars just for being in that game. And that's not the case in club rugby in the United States. So 2017, I'm 37, and I was like, this is my last year. And so I decided I was going to retire. And at the same time, we were getting 50, 60, 70 guys out at training. So we had enough guys to have a full competitive Division I, Division II, and Division III rugby sides.
Wow.
So me and actually an old teammate of mine said, look, I'm going to take over Division III. It's going to be a little bit less serious, but let's play Division III, keep playing and be competitive in this club. And I don't want to be playing against 25-year-old South Africans or New Zealand guys or whatever anymore. Anyway, let's be fair. So we did that, and it 38 years old, we won back-to-back national championships in D3.
Wow.
In 19, I was the MVP of the Division III USA Rugby National Championship. We were undefeated in 18 and 19. COVID hit, and so there was obviously a pause there. We lost our first game in 2022, Josh, and it was a similar. I'd won the 2 national championships, MVP of 1. I'm now 42, so it's kind of like, again, this natural time where it'd be good to retire. But I will tell you personally, and into the process, as I've gotten older and my process has gotten better, meaning my sleep, my mental outlook, how I treat myself at all levels, how I'm feeding myself, how I treat others.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say I'm Benjamin Button, and rugby is extremely tough, but man, I'm able to compete at a level that was, in 10 years prior.
Yeah.
I should be mid-30s, early 30s, how I'm able to compete and my body works now. And it's because of how I treat myself, the process, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you, and I think you'll have full empathy with this too, even later on in life you will, but I like having that goal,
Mm-hmm.
right? So as we were talking about, I decided to play this year again. I did not play the whole regular season. I played enough to qualify for the playoffs. I noticed a shift. Some days I'm like, okay, I'll get up and go to the gym. Some days not. When I decided I'm going to go play 7 days a week, I'm up early. I'm not saying I'm training every day, but it's always mobility, strengthening. And man, you get your body charged up at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, your mind's charged up. And it was like, yeah, rugby's hard, but I started to see this incremental shift in my life. Again, not massive because I do treat myself well, but it was a net positive playing rugby with my entire family, which is very interesting. And this was a good case study this past year because I hadn't played in over, a year or so. And I did not play a lot of the regular season. And the minute I started playing, goals were more defined. I'm getting up earlier. I'm training every time because I got a game that weekend or a playoff game that weekend or whatever. So again, I know it'll end one day.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But yeah, I think to your point, I think it's the sort of accessory or subsidiary benefits that come along with competing at a relatively high level, no matter what your age. I'm 43, whether I'm 23, oftentimes in the US, you play college sports or play high school and you're done. And that's where rugby, all the martial arts, hiking, but there's so many amazing things that your athletic career doesn't have to end when you're 20 years old.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's the coolest thing about what you're doing is I think there's so many facets to what you said, because I think it's not only what you're doing, because I feel like what you're doing, you love it, but also it's also getting you to also learn how to adapt and adjust as you get older. But it's also pretty cool to like, how does your family see you doing this process? Because I'm curious. How old are your boys?
Oh yeah, so one they're 14 and 9.
9. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the 14-year-old be 15 and on the 12th of August, so almost 15. I know. freshman, and so he'll starting high school. So a lot of good fun changes there. And then the 9-year-old will be in third grade.
Wow.
Yep.
And how's have you been, your experience with rugby? Like, how's that helped you, like, as a father? I'm just curious because I have a 5-month-old.
Yep. Yes,
so I'm just
yes.
like, I could imagine like them going, man, my dad shows so much passion and love in something, and he's willing to figure it out and still be there for his family and still be a family man. Like, I would love to figure out how like that's process been with rugby and your kids.
Right. So you and I are we express ourselves through the physical body.
Yep.
I don't. It's certainly everyone's not like that, and that's okay too. I think our children watching us do things that we love and doing them well and putting time into the process. That's the most important thing. My oldest has been watching me since he could walk.
Wow.
So we have old photos of him with, like 4 or 5 rugby balls struggling at 1 or 2 years old, going to tip him over.
Yeah.
And so I joke like he's never had a chance. And he, of course, but he expresses himself similarly in that regard. He's always been a competitor and he's always enjoyed playing sports. He actually did. He was heavy into karate pre-COVID, and that kind of shut it down, unfortunately, because it was remote, and he was like,
yeah.
But he's a lefty, extremely coordinated, gifted athlete, and we've had this bond, and so he enjoys watching me play, even though. And it's the same way with me. I love going to watch him play football or rugby. Those are kind of his 2 main ones. I love it. And to have this like rapport where, again, it's stereotypical, but I'm not the dad with the big belly in the stands that doesn't do anything all day. And yeah, I can watch my kid, but like I do it still too. And we have this really cool rapport that he knows I'm capable at 43, and then I get out there and mix it up, and same here, and I think it's affected his work ethic in a positive way too. Let's put it that way. And he definitely likes to train and do those things way earlier than I did. He's watched me do it. He sees the benefit. He's growing himself. So yeah, I think it's brought us closer to simply answer your point. The 9-year-old, he didn't start playing sports till he was 6.
Wow.
We didn't, and I was in a different space in life, still playing rugby, but it's funny. We often talk or think our kids are going to grow up and be a certain way because of how we are. That's not always true.
No.
It's not always true. You have so many siblings and cousins and people that I know pretty well too. So it's not true. You can be raised by the same parents, and it's just, we're special.
Yeah.
He likes to build Legos and create and get in the yard and play all day. He's very social, but interesting. He can entertain himself for hours.
Wow.
Hours. Still, he's 9 still. So like he's not, but he it was funny, and it was one decision that has stayed with me. So when I was playing the higher level pre-COVID, he would have been 4 or 5 years old, 3 or 4 years old, and he had no recollection, no memory really of it. And so it was post-COVID, and he was one of the decision factors, seriously, Josh, that I said I want to play, because I wanted him to have a memory of what my oldest has fully, not an egoic. I don't care. There was some fun little things though, Josh. There was an Instagram video of me when I won the 2019 national championship. And I have never, I'm sure I've got it saved somewhere, but I'm not waking up watching this interview every day or anything like that. And someone had texted to me, and I'm playing it in the truck with my son.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a little one. It's just he and I, and he's probably 7 years old at the time, maybe it's a year ago. And he says, wait, he goes, Dad, are you famous? And I was like, yeah. like, yeah, where have you been? You know, where have you been? How did you not know this? Blah, blah, blah. We were laughing, but I was like, his mindset of me is nothing like my oldest, which is again totally okay. But so as I said, I decided to play more. They love going out to watching the games. It brings us together, gives us something to do as a family. My two little, again, the oldest plays rugby and football, and the little one does flag football and likes doing the sports too. But it's been a massive plus for us. It's kept us closer together. And I think the one thing that will be left with them in their mind forever is just this idea of working hard for something, putting the time and effort in, and competing. And I wanted that little one to know that he can do anything in life.
Yeah.
Right. If he has a remembrance of his dad doing these things at a higher level, again, doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I'm building a house or competing at a martial arts contest or playing rugby. Matters not. I wanted him to know that's in his blood. It's in his DNA. It's in his connection as a human being. Right.
Yeah, I love that.
So, anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's the best part too is getting to the point where it's like not only is they see me as an example, but the connection, but also like it's cool to recognize that everyone is their own spiritual being. It's like no one's gonna be the same. Even for me, like my son's 5 months old, and me and him definitely gonna do jujitsu together. But if he chooses to do something else, that's fine too. But he's definitely gonna be influenced me because I'm, definitely gonna be doing jujitsu. He's gonna see it and do my martial arts training. But it's also cool to recognize that we're all here in our spiritual path. And that brings me, I love that you say that, because I love that you say that they can do anything they put the mind to and they do work to it. And I want to switch the gears because I'm glad you went over your rugby side and your kid side, so they can see all facets of it. But then I also think that it also applies now to the spiritual path and the Marconics path, because as you know, it's the strongest warriors that actually take the path of sovereignty and choose themselves. Like it's much easier to stick with my old habits. It was much easier for me to do the plant medicines that I used to do because it was fun and it was cool. It was much easier for me to still be a people pleaser because I had no boundaries. It was much easier for me to do these things and not take the healing path and pick and choose in true sovereignty. So I would love to kind of switch the gears to like now on the spiritual side. What's been your process? And because you have a warrior spirit in all aspects of life, and it also applies to the spiritual. So I love your perspective on that side, because you're very connected, and when I met with you, and you're committed to the path. So I'd love to get your perspective on the spiritual.
You're right. First of all, the top warriors have both of those sides. I think we can always see and it's kind of what we were talking about. I think balance is a good sort of analogy, or you're not perfect, Josh, I'm not perfect, but it's that at least path to balance that we're seeking. And again, I don't even know if 10 years ago I even probably understood that. Right. But so my path, and as I said, I needed the ankle injury. Fact, I needed to open up the channels. I needed to get healthy. Is interesting you were saying about the plant medicines or other things like that. The thing that goes along with rugby is a lot of alcohol. You play the game, and then it's party time. And so I had to get to the space where, and if I didn't play, it wasn't the partying. I had children now, that wasn't a big thing in my life, but I played rugby for the love of the game. And because you play rugby doesn't mean that you have to go stay out till 2:00 in the morning. Right. And oftentimes there's these behaviors and things that go along with sports and other things in our life that they don't necessarily, you don't have to partake in that and still compete and take care of yourself and enjoy playing rugby. But once I got my everything clean and sort of in much better alignment in my life, dude, I'll tell you, and I hope you may have listeners empathizing, and maybe you will too, but my path was like a sledgehammer from God or whoever my angels are or my higher self slamming me on the head And I don't know that I wouldn't have got there, but specifically, Josh, and again, it'd be interesting if other your friends or family of other listeners have empathy for this, but I started to wake up in and around the time of full moons regularly. And I'm talking, when I say regularly, I mean 2 days before the full moon, 2 days after the full moon, and on the day of the full moon, month after month after month after month. Okay. I was angry. I would get a rush of energy. I could feel the heat. People were like, why can't you just go back to bed? Or my wife, nah, so going back to bed was not an option. Okay. And I tried to take, supplements or change something in my routine. I was healthy, dude. So there was no explanation. I would go, the full moon energy would go away. I go back to bed. And again, you talk about quantum stuff or metaphysical things. I'm just a rugby real estate guy with a couple kids. I'm not any of that path. And if I've done plant medicine to that point, Josh, it was for fun. Okay. Like none of the path, none of it. And so this was 2017 for a fact. And 2017, 2018, I had begun coaching rugby at the University of Texas. And one of my kids his father was a Qigong master, Tai Chi master. He was an Olympic high jumper. He fathered this guy much older. And we would talk regularly. Very interesting guy, and a perfect, again, example of he's all about the power of the mind. He's got scientific journal articles written on Qigong. Like, he's out there and he's amazing. And so I started to text him about what was going on. Yeah. He says, he taught me a Qigong move, lift the sky, I believe is what it was. And so I would wake up, I'd be angry, maybe have some tea, and sometimes I'd lay there and read. And then I began to go into my garage and would do this lift the sky. And I would feel this energy, as best I could put it, this intense connection to source, right? This intense energy coming out of my body. And it's 4:00 in the morning. I'm in South Austin, Texas by myself. Everyone's sleeping. And it would happen all the time. And so I'm texting him, I'm like, dude, I got to figure it out. And so he teaches me this move. I'm starting to sort of wake up to our energetic body, our energetic side, right? Yeah. And so I'm like, I need a new move. This is going on for a long time. I'm like, I need a new move. And he takes me out this long dissertation. And what it was just like Lotus. Like, he was just like, your next move is just sitting here, right? And so I began to figure out, Josh, he was saying meditate, right? He in this long, but he was just saying to meditate. Yeah, for real.
He's like, sit with yourself, which us men don't do, or we never be instructive of it. And then it's not until you get, which my favorite quote is, the universe will sledge you with the hammer or tickle you with the feather, depending on how willing and open you are. A lot of us light workers, especially as men, are hard-headed naturally because we've just been conditioned. But then you're like, the guy's like, yeah, you just need to meditate. So keep going. That's awesome.
Yeah, what a blessing. And we think about why people have been in our lives and when they are, et cetera. So I start to meditate based on his tutelage. And dude, I had no morning routine. I'm not meditating in the morning. Like, none of that is part of my awareness yet. But when I would wake up, I began to realize that I would meditate, I could go back to sleep. And I will tell you, between you and I, or for the purpose of this conversation, I would get clear information meditating at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And it was like a download. It was something that I needed, maybe something benign, maybe something that was big, having to do with my life or things going on. I would get the information, I would have gratitude for it, and I was able to go back to sleep. And I did not figure that out. And it was like clockwork.
Wow.
Sometimes I was able to go back to sleep before. Sometimes I was up, man. If I hadn't gone to bed a decent hour, I'm struggling all next day, you know, because I was woken up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Every time I would meditate, I would get the information or this sort of download, and I would go back to sleep. And I had no problem deep dreaming sleep.
Wow. And what I see happening, and I want to make this clear, is that you were being awakened and you were sledged with this hammer and not being able to sleep. You met this guy who gave you advice to just sit with yourself and meditate. And through that, you sitting, you got this sort of intelligence that you were able to tap into. That is why I want to remind the audience of why we do these type of things of meditating and sitting with ourselves, because that sort of intelligence, it was kind of like you had to be shaken up. So I want to remind everyone, like, whenever you're shaken up, take that time to sit with yourself and ground yourself in the fact that, you know what, there's something shaken up in my life for a reason. Let me go ahead and figure out why, you know? So it's cool that for you, it led you to meditation to then sit down with yourself to realize, damn, I'm getting some type of intelligence when I'm doing this instead of not sleeping. Right. So when people go, at that time, other regular people or doctors would say you're crazy, right? They'll call a lot of us light workers crazy because we're seeing this stuff and they're like, oh, you probably just should take something to go to sleep, or you need anxiety pills and medication. It's like, no, I think the world's trying to shake you up to wake you up. We're here to wake each other up as light workers, and we're here to just keep sparking our lights for everyone. So I'd love for you to kind of keep going with the story of like, what was the next steps after that?
Totally. And I will say, not to backtrack, but the ankle, you think about the ankle and waking up, these could be perceived as negatives.
Yes.
Bad injury. Who the heck wants to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning for multiple nights in a row? You young family, I'm working. Like, that's not cool. It's not cool. But when I shifted my perspective on it, things changed, number one. And number two, you begin to see every one of these things as a guidance or a lesson, and not a victim mode where something bad has happened to me. Nothing bad is going to happen to us. None of it. It's all a lesson, period. It is for our experience and a richness of experience here. And again, as you said, some of us are walking along this path of line, and some of us need a sledgehammer across the head, and I needed a sledgehammer across the head. So that began the path, period. I will say, in this, like, or, you know, we've always been on the path, but the ankle, and then this waking up in the middle of the night and learning meditation. The next step or progression, and this was when I was now getting more into things like Marconics, although I hadn't done any Marconics work yet. And again, this divine universe. I went to get a massage from a lady in South Austin, and I found her on Craigslist or just online, and I show up. It was close to my house. She was a wonderful person, and she says, by the way, I do a hypno massage, hypnotherapy plus combined with massage. And I'm like, look, lady, I'm here. I want a massage. Like, I didn't ask. I want any of that. My neck hurts. I've been playing rugby. And she says, okay, but, you know, it can be a really great thing, blah, blah, blah. Have you ever done it? And I said, no. So I agreed to the hypno massage. Oh my goodness. Next level, taken to another, you know, place. Like, I just remember feeling such peace. Like, I had never, again, had that sort of next level experience like that. I would liken that on the path to like a plant medicine type, right?
Right. Yep.
From a therapeutic place.
Yep.
It had that feeling. And I went to see her. She's a life coach. She's got a book. She's a great person. I'm happy to link her in any of your notes later on. But I went to see her 6 or 8 times after, and so we do the hypno massage. Now I just love the hypno massage. I've done it probably on the 4th time. She says, listen, I want to be honest with you. I don't do the hypno massage a lot. Actually, I'm more of like a hypnotherapist for like execs and CEOs and sports guys. that are trying to, again, tap into what your whole, what we've been talking about for a while now. And I'm like, oh man. So first I want a massage, and I agreed to your hypno massage, and now you're telling me no to the hypno massage, and you're not even going to rub on my sore shoulders. I'm going to sit in this chair. And so I'm like, okay, reluctantly, I agree. And it was at that time where it was sort of like what we were saying. And I can tell you the story if you want, and if not, no big deal. But it was at that time during her sessions that I had seen the true light connection to source. While I was being under hypnotherapy, completely conscious and coherent, I could have snapped right out of it if I wanted to. But part of what I was going to say was a healing journey, a trauma in my past that we dealt with under hypno. And again, that light source that we all have connected to a higher power, I could physically see it, Josh, right? Wow. We say it and it's fun to say, and taglines, and we're light workers and all these things, but when you see it, it's different, and you feel it, right? Yeah. That's a sort of next level in terms of what the nature of reality is, what's actually out there, what our connection is, etc. And so that was the next step for me. And then it was natural into Marconics after that.
Yeah.
Because Marconics is now not so far fetched or ascension energy or chakra type of work, or these healing modalities years before would have seen, I don't know. It would have been too far fetched.
Yeah, and it's a path, right? And that's why I always say, like, Marconics, people who usually get introduced to Marconics, of the, not necessarily working with earth energy, it's path, because I had the similar story. I worked with a lady who did Reiki and readings every day for like 3 years. And then I'm like, all right, I'm kind of addicted to this. And then realizing, Marconics allowed me to just realize that I have my own source of power, and I can tap in that to myself, right? And I could transmute any trauma I'm dealing with and transmute any fear to light, and et cetera, et cetera. So like, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it's easy for, someone who is a higher level, vibration, and who's at a high frequency like yourself. It's easy for people, again, just like anything else, it's easy for people to say, wow, you're so high frequency, like, how do you get there? But it's like, man, I did hypnotherapy at a time where I didn't even know what that was. I just stumbled onto it because of freaking a lady I wanted a massage, right? So the massage, you're like, I'm in here for the massage. And the lady's like, no, you're in here to do your light work, right? And I think there's certain experiences we have in our lives that are here to remind us that, you think you want the massage, but your soul really needs this, and I think what we've been talking a lot about the mind and body, and I think what is actually eternal is our soul and our spirit. So all these mind body led you to get into your spiritual work, which is really cool to see how the process work. And we have similar, so in different ways, but similar paths of, like, we spent a lot of time doing, like, like that hypnotherapy allow you to work through a lot of your healing so you could get to a higher frequency. Same with me. A lot of what I did with my Reiki coach was really cool. A lot of inner child work, a lot of stuff, just trauma that I've had that I never got a chance to even address. So what's been your experience, like, addressing your trauma with the hypnotherapy? And then, like, because I know Marconics is a high level, but like, what was your process and your jump from hypnotherapy now to Marconics?
Yeah. So, well, I'll tell you the specific. It was a time, and not the long story, but what I will tell you about the trauma was that it could seem, again, benign or not like a massive deal. I remember the instance, I wasn't abused or anything like that, Josh, but I remember the instance. I healed the instance, and I guess my point, my relevance for the audience would be that I'm not saying to go look for trauma or anything like that, but sometimes it can be, and I think psychology and science even backs this up. It can be what would seem like a benign or a not that big of a deal situation that happened when we were a kid, or maybe happened a few times, that led us into wiring in some way, or repressing things, or thinking certain thoughts about ourselves personally that either may or may not be true, or affecting us way worse or in different ways than we could even imagine. And so that was this case, Josh. And I will tell you specifically, when I got done with the session, I walked out of the door, new world.
Wow.
Period. Like,
yeah, and I love that, because like what we don't realize is that as kids, we suppress it and repress it as a protection mechanism, right? It's so much better as kids when we're not given these tools, right? So we're not given these tools, and then we go through experiences, and as we get older, we're like, we convince ourselves that it wasn't a big deal.
yes,
But yet it changes your lens of life. Now you take time to address it. You don't avoid it. You take time to address it and realize that was real. I did experience that. And then you walk out of this appointment, it's a whole new world.
that's right. And again, you made a great point about Marconics at these various levels. But I would encourage people, no matter on what level, to not be afraid of that work, number one. And number two, to don't underestimate the power. Because, for example, in that hypno, all she did was open me up for my higher self to take me where I needed to go.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, again, these long, what extreme traumatic things, but there was a few of them. They were healed. I'm on a sort of different timeline now, if you think about it that way. And when I step out of the door, that emotional baggage that was on that old timeline, it's gone.
Yeah.
I felt differently about myself, about, again, it's subtle, but it was subtle, but it was real. As I said, that led me to Marconics. Quickly, we can talk about this if we want. I met Christy Farmer through who was our Marconics teacher. Again, sort of divine, and our sons went to school together. But that was natural progression. And I will tell you again, as it relates to everyone listening, when I did the first Marconics work, I stepped out of her door. I'm on a new place. And so I work in real estate, land development, Josh, with Rugby and the things I do. The most dramatic change was my manifestation ability.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Substantially increased. We all have them. I think you and I have even touched on sort of how to activate them with what we're putting our attention and our energy and our minds on. But that ability amplified substantially, which was, again, cool and amazing and part of my path. But these steps started to get more dramatic and more pronounced, and it just really incredible. And so, fast forward. You're telling
the audience that, so this is what I'm hearing. You're telling the audience that the more you do the healing work, and the more you address the traumas and the things you've been through, and the more that you're willing to actually connect with yourself at a deeper level, the more you're able to create magic and manifest.
Period. End of sentence. And I was going to say, and I didn't earlier, it's your podcast, the Gentleman's Dojo. I think that there's this, when you talk about manifestation, you talk about light workers. In our culture, it's a very feminine topics oftentimes. And I'll tell you, from about as masculine as a perspective as I know, and I'm talking to another masculine man, that these are not topics that are for just one gender or the other. These are human topics, and it doesn't matter what your trade is, or what sort of work you do, or what your hobbies are, what sports you play, or whatever. They apply to us all. Period. And as you were saying and eloquently put, the more you do the work, at no matter where you are in life, the more magic that occurs after doing the work.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, yes. Wow, that's a banger. All right, I got a few more questions to wrap up the podcast because that was right there a banger, Connally. I appreciate you, you emphasizing on that because I think we've been conditioned and programmed, as you know, to let go of our magic and to give our power away. So it's really beautiful to hear you say that, we're really here to take our power back and really hold into that because we can forget that, and we all have the powers. It's not just, and that's why I love having someone like you on there who's like the most, society's term as masculine, right? I'm not saying
No,
our,
yeah.
our world, it's just we're just another being, but in society's world, they see, doesn't matter who you are, what you do, there's always room for divine, and the connection for us and source is why we're all here. And I think we're all here to remind each other of our light. And, I really appreciate, being by your side in the certification class. And it was really cool to have that experience with, other men in the class. Cause you go to events like this and you're right, it's usually more female dominant. And we had a few guys in our class, which was cool to see. And I think more men are waking up, and that's been my intention of starting the Gentleman's Dojo. So I appreciate you spitting some bars on the podcast, and I'm going to end it with a few questions.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask you a selfish question because being a new father, I know there's a lot of challenges, especially in the baby stage. But what's been your biggest challenge as a father?
Biggest challenge. Okay. They copy everything that you do. So number one biggest challenge is making sure that you what you were telling them is what you were doing. Period. That, I mean, you got to walk the walk. You got to talk the talk. They are sponges. Everything. So what you're saying, what you're putting into your body, how you're treating yourself, they are watching like a 24/7 movie recording. And so is what you are doing in alignment with what you are telling them and who you are wanting them to be? And challenge, it's a massive challenge.
Yeah.
But it is a massive benefit and a massive opportunity for your own personal growth.
Mm.
If you can just step out and say, who's my son going to be when they're 5, 10, 15, 20? If you're acting in the way that, the gist of what you want them to be, the likelihood of them being that is massive.
Wow.
Right. And
Yep.
if you're not acting and treating yourself and sort of operating in what you want them to end up being like, then, that's probably that becomes more likely. And so the challenge is, again, the biggest, it's like the stoic, right? The difficulty is the way, or the challenge is the way.
Yeah.
And so, but that is, it's a challenge. But again, I think it's made me a better human, way more growth. But I've got to ask myself constantly, what I'm doing, what I'm saying, is that in alignment with, what I want them to be, what they're actually seeing me do, right? Biggest challenge by far, I'd say.
I love that. And I think that's good for a lot of fathers listening, to all the dads, to remind us, our kids are watching what we're doing that's in alignment with ourselves, which then puts us at a higher frequency, right? And that frequency they feel,
You don't, the 9-year-old, right? And I mean, he's been doing this his whole life. Like, I don't have to teach. I don't have to say a lot to him. I exude it and I model it in how I treat myself. Yeah. Right. Hopefully it's not always perfect, but and then I allow him, there's genius and there's amazing things in him too. I don't need to do a lot with it. I need to cultivate it. And if he steers off a little bit, I just need to help guide him back on the path. Right. But there's some cool awareness there too that I'm sure you're starting to see in your own son, where it's like the times where you got to go do something, and then there's times when you step back and you just let that genius and that amazing thing grow, right?
Oh, love that. I love that. And I think that is so good to hear. Society really needs to hear that. Our kids, we're not here to teach our kids. Our kids are here to teach us.
Oh, I think I said it. I think I said it. It's made me a better human being for both those boys. And I can look back and look at, again, some of these milestones and pivotal points. And I needed those boys. I have gratitude for them every day. And massive make my life much better. So
I love it. I love
yeah.
it. All right. Now, our last question of the Gentleman's Dojo podcast is, what is one piece of advice you'll give to men who are either about to step into the healing journey or want to get into the healing journey? What's one piece of advice?
Yeah, I think we touched on a little bit. I'd say first of all that all paths and all walks of life are, lack of a better word, are welcome. This is a human journey, period. And so if you can take a step back from the sort of programming that we have of what color your skin color is, or what your job is, or again, the sports you play, those hats are real to an extent, yes. But when you take the hats off, we're all just humans together, right? And so I think the biggest bit of advice is, just like even any workout program, you take that first step. You have to take the first step. You have to take action. And number one, and number two, don't stereotype yourself that because, again, that you do, I play rugby, or I'm a farmer, or you name it, that these spiritual paths and this awakening that's going on doesn't apply to me. It applies to all of us. And on the positive side, and you already highlighted on it, if you want more magic in your life, if you want more manifestation powers, more abundance, more connection, again, all walks, right? All walks for any human being. You take that first step down the path, and you honor it, and you have gratitude for it, and you go and realize that that's part of this journey as to why we're here on earth. It's for all of us. That's what I would say, especially to your point, to the men. It's for all of us. It's not for the plant medicine people or whatever conceptions and stereotypes we have. They're wrong. It's for every human being on this planet today. And if you want more magic in your life, start that journey and don't be afraid.
I love it. You got it, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it from the man, Connally. I appreciate that's an amazing advice. I think it's so it feels good to hear, it's fresh. It feels fresh to hear of the reminders. And I think the more we can remind these people, the better we can, keep spreading the light, because it is for all of us. So Connally, I appreciate you spending this hour with me on this Gentleman's Dojo podcast. You were just straight spinning bars. I enjoy, I'm glad we crossed paths in our journey, and grateful for that as well too. And just seeing what you've done in your path and how you've, pivoted this whole decade is so inspirational, and how you're still living it out. And no matter where you are in life, you're still stepping into that. So I really appreciate you guys. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and share this podcast. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Os.